Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel for another preview and predicted 11 plus Chelsea news, Chelsea transfer news, and all sorts of stuff that there is to talk about the beautiful football club that is called Chelsea. We are, as you can see on screen, of course, joined by three very, very special guests. Let me start off with Mr. Clutch, pretty much turning to my co-host at this point, which I'm a big fan of. So, Clutch, thank you for coming, as always, mate. And how are you feeling? Obviously, we were all in a pretty depressed mood after that late equaliser by Zenit the other day. And then even after we streamed, we only found out that Ruben picked up an injury in warm-up, and that's why Reece even played in midfield in the first place. But we did get a few pieces of good news today in terms of when Kante is going to be back. Jorginho is at least available to play, albeit playing through pain. Ruben Loftus-Cheek seems to be fine. No idea what exactly the situation is there. So there are a few positives at least. But how are you feeling ahead of Leeds tomorrow? Nervous that the bad run is going to continue, or confident we're going to turn it around? Clutch, I cannot hear you.
I think I got it.
Oh, there we go.
I got it.
There he is.
I figured it out. Thank you again for having me, as always. But to answer the simple question of, am I worried? Yes. I mean, I was worried after we didn't turn it around from Burnley and we kept making those same mistakes. And we're not learning from it. So at this point, I'm trying to figure out, when are we going to learn from this? With a not fully fit Jorginho, our midfield's depleted. So basically our possession game, which is where we're strongest, is lacking. So something's got to give. We keep getting injuries. Ian said it the other day while we were doing the preview to Zenit that Ruben was the next one to go. He got hurt in the pre-warm. Good thing it wasn't that long, or wasn't a long-term injury, but it's just, we're only going to be picking up more games from here on out. So something's got to give. At some point, we're going to have to decide, when are we just going to use the youth team like Liverpool did a couple years ago and just throw the full youth team out against Chesterfield or against Brentford? I don't care, but these guys need rest because they can't be playing as much as they are right now.
I hear you. I'm not quite sure I fully agree on the point that it's always the same mistake since Burnley, because against Burnley and United, we were good, just didn't take our chances and had an individual mistake, especially against United, that cost us the 3 points, essentially. Against West Ham, we weren't actually that bad, but made two individual mistakes, but didn't miss that many big chances compared to against United and against Burnley. While against Watford, we were just awful, compared to that. And then against Zenit, we were good for 10 minutes, then awful for another 60, then had a decent 10-minute spell again, and then we're back to being awful. So I'm not quite sure if it's always the same problems, but one thing's for sure is the injuries have taken their toll. And I completely agree. I'm a bit baffled. Our explanation post-game was maybe the bubble regulations have changed, and that's why we couldn't include under 21s and under 23s. But then you look at the squads of Man United, Liverpool, and Man City as well. They're from the same country. So, if they can, put all of their youth players on their benches, then so should we. And I know we're maybe slightly lacking for that, it talent or whatever right now, because they are either on loan or already playing in the first team. And obviously the academy has to catch up a little bit with all of a sudden in the last 3 years, us bringing through everyone, not just through the first team, but also through other, clubs in the Premier League and all over Europe. But still, wouldn't that still be better than having to play, I don't know, Reece James in the middle, overplaying that guy? Wouldn't it be better to at least have someone on the bench from the youth to bring on for him? Which I'm a little bit confused about. I'll go to you, Charlie. Obviously, similar question as I asked Clutch a second ago, in terms of, you worried that the bad run is going to continue, or do you think we're going to bounce back? But do you have much of an opinion on this whole situation again, there isn't the star. We don't have a Billy Gilmore in the academy right now. But it's still better than not having anyone on the bench, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, look, firstly, am I worried? Could not worry just yet. If we were to not win this game, but a draw or loss, then I think I would start to be a lot more worried. I think it's simmering at the moment. It's on the cusp of going from concern to kind of, this is actually a big problem. Because as you touched on, Laurenz, the Burnley game, the United game, we actually played quite well. We just didn't take our chances. So it wasn't a performance issue. And obviously Tuchel, in his presser today, Obviously, he was reminded that we've got 3 wins in our last 7 games. But he said he was more concerned about the last 3 games. And that was obviously United, West Ham and Zenit. And I think...
Watford, West Ham.
Watford, sorry. Yeah, Watford, yeah. And I think that's fair because I think the performance levels in those games have not been there. And I think the word he used was average. And at Chelsea, you can't get away with average. And I think that was a good way of looking at it. And it's not like we've kind of, these teams have outplayed us. We've let ourselves down. We gifted West Ham 2 goals, which gave them the game. All right, admittedly, we didn't play that well in the first half, in the second half against West Ham, sorry. But, gifted them 2 goals. We did enough to get a draw in that game easily. And then Zenit, I honestly thought we'd beat them 3 or 4-0 once we went 1 up in the first 2 minutes. And we just kind of sat off. But I'm not worried. But it's bordering on getting a little bit concerned because obviously Chelsea in December is not really a good marriage if previous years are to go by. But yeah, in terms of the bench, I always feel you should fill the bench. Like even if you're not going to use all the subs, just fill it anyway because it's good experience for those youngsters. I don't know why the likes of like Harvey Vale couldn't be on the bench, even if he's not going to play. Just fill those places because it's all good experience for those next guys coming through. But yeah, for me tomorrow, I don't want to say it's must win because it's only like start of December, but I almost feel like it's in that category of game because if we go another game and we don't win, that's suddenly 2 wins in our last 6 Premier League matches. And that's not good enough when you're going for the title and with the quality of players we've got. But one thing I've noticed is that comparing us to Manchester City, I think it's kind of widely known that we've probably got the 2 best squads in the league. But the big difference is that their squad players, like the guys on the bench and whatnot, they're virtually knocking on the door. They're almost as good as their starters, pretty much. But for us, the guys dropping down, they're good, but they're not as good as they perhaps should be in terms of filling the squad. When you got to rely on the likes of Ross Barkley to come in and do a job, the guy's not good enough. Obviously, Sal Niguez, we all know he's useless at the moment. He's not going to do anything. But when you're relying on those kind of players to come in, is it any wonder we're not getting results?
No, exactly. That's the problem. I mean, the thing is, in certain positions, we have exactly the same as Man City. Like usually we play a midfield too, and that would, say it's Jorginho and Kante, that would have Kovacic and Ruben Loftus-Cheek on the bench. That's fine. There's no problems. But when you have 3, like we had for Zenit, 3 of these guys injured, actually 4 in the end with Ruben as well. Well, even City probably, if they had 4 injuries in the same position, even they'd probably struggle. I would presume. I'm not an expert on their squad depth, but still. But then you look at our forward areas, we have only 1 real striker, but we are arguably better with Kai Havertz anyway. But in those 2 positions around it, we have loads of players. Like we could have 3 injuries and it will still not really matter. But then at wing backs, we only have 1 good one each because as soon as it's not that 1 good one, we're screwed. So, it's kind of like it's back and forth. And obviously the whole contract situation makes the whole centre-back scenario a little bit more difficult. It's a tough one. Before I go to you, Jester, big up everyone watching already. There's a lot of people here in the chat already. Simon, CFC Videos, big up yourself. Obviously, Melly, Timothy, Texas Blue, Cranky Pants. Big, interesting name, mate. Timothy, Javi, appreciate you all for tuning in. And Pandit, I would like to pronounce your first name, but I'm only going to butcher it, so I'm just going to save myself that embarrassment. But Jester, you're, of course, our last and very special guest. Thank you for coming. As always, you have told us you've come with numbers. We'll get to those numbers later. But similar question as I've posed to the other guys before we get into it more and more. Are you worried? And if you're worried, what are you worried about?
I don't think I'm worried. It's not like this is the first team playing and we're playing like this, right? This is the backups at some positions. And yes, the depth that we all rave about, those players in those positions have turned out not to be the answer. Mm-hmm. Whether it's your Sowles, whether it's your Alonso, whether it's your Aspie at this point, some other players. And when you're having to play all of those players together and in a game that you need to have points in, I can see the Zenit result. The Manchester United result, along with the Burnley result, it's just about taking your chances. If we take our chances in those games, we get those 4 points that we lost. And that makes up for losing to West Ham, which is, look, with the squad we put out there, it's perfectly okay to go to West Ham and lose. Okay? Individual mistakes. But you've got those 4 points from Burnley and Manchester United that you should have. I'd take those 4 points over losing 3, because 4 is always a bigger number than 3, right? But when you don't take your chances and you don't win those games and you draw them, a loss like West Ham compounds it, because you've not only dropped 4 points, you've dropped 3 more, so you've dropped 7. So I think it's about injuries at this point, about what we're going to do to solve these positional issues. Everybody's saying, well, if we wouldn't have Gallagher or Gilmore on loan, this wouldn't be an issue. Well, you're going to sit back there and say, okay, we're going to go 5 or 6 positions deep to where these developing players
don't have injuries, then they never play all season.
Right. And then they never develop. So that's an argument for hindsight. Yeah, it would have been great if we had the hindsight to know that this whole positional group would be decimated. And it still is, by the way. If you had a knock on Wednesday, you're not fully 100% for Saturday. And we know Jorginho isn't. So basically, we have to figure that out now. I think we have enough to beat Leeds. We should beat Leeds. And again, we'll get into the numbers when we start talking about a different positional group.
Exactly. I mean, West slightly disagrees, maybe not the right word, but I completely agree with you that it's not a big cause for concern, because it's, for the most part, has not been our actually strongest team playing that has been struggling as much, except against West Ham. Because against West Ham, other than Alonso, it was sure, not Kante, not Cover, but it was at least Jorginho and Ruben. It wasn't like it was against Zenit, and it wasn't like it was against Watford, where it was Saul and Ruben. So we were very close to our strongest team. Like, we weren't far off it.
Well, those two positions really matter,
but we still bottled it. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, those two positions really matter. That other midfielder besides Jorginho, Kovacic has 6 goal contributions out of that position. Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, he's a miss this year. Kante, when he is Kante, not the shadow of Kante we've been seeing in some games. That's what I like to see. It's the shadow of Kante. That's not the real dude. He does so much other than the goal contributions that you can allow it, because he brings so much else to the game, and he'll pop up with an odd screamer, right? So missing those guys, that class of player, and then losing a class of player like Chilwell, and like I said, if Chilwell is Nando's, Alonso is KFC. Right, it's a huge golfing class, and the structure of this team is such that they rely on players to at least do their jobs, and when people don't, it starts to exploit the weaknesses that every player on this team has. Every player has their weakness. Exactly. They're not like, it's not like perfect players out there. It's not like we have a $400,000 left center back, right?
No. Good segue, though. Good segue. Now, because I do agree, it's just that's half of the problem. If it's the wrong positions where we're missing a player, we're in deep trouble. If it's just 2, in other positions, it's fine. But the problem is those are exactly those 2 positions where we currently do have the injuries. But Jester did use a wonderful segue there. So let's move on to a couple of things. Let me quickly mention what happened in the press conference, what was said, and then let's move on to talking about the Antonio Rüdiger situation and how we might potentially be replacing him. Now, press conference. I touched on it already a little bit earlier. Some positive news. Jorginho is back, at least in terms of playing. He will have to play through the pain, which, obviously certain others will not appreciate because, it's Jorginho, F him. Do you know what I mean? Like, all right, go on then. Be easy for Jorginho to say, nah, bro, I'm injured. I can't play, and just, let everything see out. But no, he's happy to be scapegoated because he knows he's not at his best capacity. But, by the way, does not excuse the touch against United. And the whole lights thing does neither. Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone has those lights, right? So figure out a way to not get blinded, mate. But, of course, pain will hinder anybody in playing to the best of their abilities. And at least he's back, still better than Saul and Barkley. That's for damn sure, right? And Ruben, just, of course, makes a good point. If you picked up a knock during the warm-up on Wednesday, you're not going to be in perfect shape on Saturday. Obviously, we don't exactly know what the knock was. Was it a muscle tightness? Was it a clash of knees? Could have been anything. Did he roll his ankle a little bit? Literally, could have been anything. Could have been his back, if we go by Ruben's track record in terms of injury, but hopefully it's not his back. That wouldn't be ideal. But we obviously don't know. But chances are he's probably not going to be at 100%. But still better than Barkley and Saul, let's be honest. And then the other positive news is that N'golo Kante is, at least according to Thomas Tuchel, they're hoping that he's going to return to training on Tuesday. Probably won't, get him involved in the game in midweek. But at least in the weekend after, hopefully Kante can at least be on the bench. Even if he can't start, at least be on the bench, which would already solve a little bit of our midfield issues. If next weekend he can be on the bench, that would be a big positive. Trevor Chalobah, again, I've touched on this before, and Tuchel didn't mention this himself today, but it was said last week that his injury isn't as bad as first feared. And he's also expected back in training this coming week, so next week, which would be good if that comes out to be true as well. And that's kind of part of the issue, because everyone's saying we need to sign this in January, we need to sign that in January. And I agree at left wing back, but there's no point in signing a centre mid, even recalling a centre mid, if our midfielders are back fit. Because, maybe you can talk about Billy, because at this point you can say Kante is never going to be fit for more than 2 weeks at a time anyway. So maybe you can make that shout. But if if Jorginho and Kovacic are fit, there's no need for Billy. Like, I'd rather he stay at Norwich and actually play under Dean Smith now and be their best player pretty much every game. I'd rather that than come here and play once every month. That's pointless, right? And the problem is just that we're in December, not in January. So we need to just fight our way through the injury troubles. But hopefully by the time we get to January, we don't have these troubles anymore. But when I do hear that Chelsea don't really want to sign the left wing back, not a fan. Especially, Jester, you sent me this yesterday, that apparently Rafa Benitez had a row with Luca Digne, obviously their left back, and apparently he might be leaving in January. They might be listening to offers in January. Although the baffling thing to that is, I swear 2 days ago, before they beat Arsenal, they were on the verge of sacking Benitez. So surely they're not going to get rid of, in my opinion, Everton's literally best player for Rafa bloody Benitez, when they're going to sack him before the end of the season, probably anyway. So I'm not too confident in it. But if this does happen to be true and Luca Digne becomes any sort of available, I don't care, bro. Get him. I don't care if we have 2 50 million left backs. I'd rather have 2 50 million left backs than Alonso. So it's not my money, is it? So if Roman can fork out the money, get the checkbook out, lad, and make it happen. But let's get actually to the talking point that is on the thumbnail, that is in the title, and that Jester touched on. Antonio Rüdiger. There have been a lot of varying reports over the last few days. Initially, it was said that he has kind of almost a pre-agreement, or rather his brother, his agent, has a pre-agreement with Real Madrid already. Then it did come out that, he's still like from the sport build in Germany, which on German players, they do usually have a pretty good track record, at least. They basically said this is far from the truth, that they have an agreement. He might be interested, but nothing's done by any stretch of the imagination. They keep saying that his first choice would still be staying at Chelsea. The problem here is that, at least reportedly, he's been offered we're not sure if by multiple clubs or if just Real Madrid, but apparently the clubs interested are Real Madrid, PSG, Juventus, and Bayern Munich. I'm not even sure about PSG, actually. Real Madrid, Juventus, and Bayern Munich for sure. Maybe PSG as well. I cannot remember. But the number thrown around is 400,000 a week. Not sure which currency we're talking here, if it's pounds or euros, whatever it is. What did you say?
It's going to be euro if they're talking about a Spanish club most of the time.
You'd expect so. You'd expect so. Which in pounds is still like 375,000 pounds a week, which is still ridiculous. And by the way, what's ridiculous here, and we're not going to blame Rüdiger by any means here. The ridiculous part here is that he's willing to stay with us. At least that's what we're told from the media, for 200k, even though he could be getting 400k. I'm not sure, like Jester shaking his head, I'm not sure if he would actually stay for 200k now that he knows he could be getting 400k. But, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt for the time being. But the big thing is here, we, Chelsea, champions of Europe, one of the richest clubs in all of world football, maybe behind PSG, Man City, and Newcastle. After that, we're probably right there as richest clubs. Yeah, you can talk about Man United, Real Madrid, sure. But we're not, like, we're in that realm of money. How exactly, can they afford that and we can't? I'm not saying we should be paying Rüdiger £400,000 a week or £375,000 a week, not by any means. But, right, if we're willing to go for De Ligt, who makes already way more than Rüdiger does with us now at Juve, if we're willing to apparently offer Koundé £200,000 a week, which was the talk in the summer, if we're willing to pay ridiculous money for Wesley Fofana from Leicester City, when by that point in the summer he will have been back for like 2 months after doing his ACL in, and no one will actually know how good he will be. Like, yeah, he could get over his injury and be perfectly fine, but that is guesswork. There's pure speculation at this point whether he will or whether he will not. I mean, maybe the doctors at Leicester have a better clue. Presumably they have a better clue than I do, but maybe they have a better clue also than the Chelsea people do. But still, we essentially don't know how good that guy's going to be. So I'll go back to you, Clutch. What did you think of the reports when you heard that they were willing to pay Rüdiger £400,000? Is your reaction to that, well, we can't match that, just he has to go. Even if he's willing to stay for less, he's just going. Or is it more the overwhelming frustration that other clubs value him so much higher than we do?
Personally, I'm just of the idea of, like, I've come to terms with he's probably leaving. That's just, I mean, it seems like everything we hear is like he's leaving. He's just not happy. He's not happy that such and such player makes this much money and he makes this much player, and they're not willing to offer. Which, if that is the case, then sure, I understand. If you're mad, I'd be mad too. I mean, you've been one of our best players, if not our best defender for the last 12 months, and you're not getting paid what you probably deserve. That's just, it's not right. And now if somebody's going to be willing to pay you $400,000, and hey, go take your payday. I don't blame you. But I mean, that's just the way Chelsea does business. I think they see him as an older player. They don't exactly know what Thomas Tuchel's plans are, because we still don't know what he wants to do for the future. I mean, we keep hearing that he wants to do a back four. We don't know if Rüdiger's going to be suitable for a back four. I mean, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes for Chelsea and why they're so unwilling to give him just $200K. If that's all he's asking for, I don't understand why you're not giving it to him. But clearly something is happening that they're just unwilling to do it. Maybe their mind's made up and they're going to buy a center back whether he stays or goes. Maybe that's just how it is. They're planning to use money that way. Who knows? I mean, personally, I've come to terms that he's probably going to leave. It's very sad, but, you know, I mean, that's just the way this club does business, and it's the way they've always done business.
Unfortunately, it is kind of true, but then when you think about it, how many players have we lost that we didn't want to lose? It's not many. It doesn't happen very often. That actually, like, sometimes we let players go and we don't give them the money they want, but then we'll find, like, for example, Willian. Yeah, but we didn't really want to keep Willian. But Rüdiger, we would actually want to keep. So this is not a common thing. It happened with Hazard, but Hazard at least left for like 100+ million. Not for bloody free, man. So it's difficult. It's difficult. And Javi, I do appreciate the comment, but Sule, for me, big no-no. Like, is a very, very big no-no. The guy's half the player he was before he did his ACL. The guy can't even get into starting 11 for Bayern Munich half the time. Do you know what I mean? And obviously that sounds derogatory against Bayern Munich when they're one of the best sides in the world. And even if I dislike them, we all have to admit that. But still, if there's one weakness to them, it's their defense, especially after Boateng and Alaba left. So the fact that he's still struggling to play every week and has mentality problems, fitness, like weight problems all the time because apparently he doesn't keep fit enough. No, I want to stay so far away from Nicolas Sule, you have no idea. Jester, I'll go to you before I go to Charlie, because I did see you shake your head a couple of times. What was the shaking your head aimed at mostly? Was it that Rüdiger would be willing to stay for £200,000 would be nice, £200,000 a week? Or what exactly are your thoughts on the whole situation, I suppose?
I don't believe any of these reports. This all
But
negotiation through
the 400,000 reports?
No.
Okay.
Because we know now that La Liga has put in a salary cap. So you can only spend so much of your revenue on players, or it has to be within a certain percentage. And you have to justify that. And that's what got Barcelona this year, by the way.
Yeah. Although they did pay Alaba £400,000 a week. So,
Right. But you're talking about Mbappe is going to be expensive. Who else?
Especially Mbappe on a free. I don't even want to know how much he's going to be on wages wise. That's going to be crazy.
So, where yes, they do have the money to do that, are they going to want to pay that amount of money when they have Mbappe coming in with a bunch, because they have to meet that salary cap? And I don't know where they're at in regards and what their profit margin is or anything like that. So I can't speak on.
Obviously, Real Madrid have lost a lot of big earners over the last couple of seasons. Obviously, Ronaldo left not long ago. Sergio Ramos just left. So they did lose a couple of very big earners for them. But sure, like we don't know how close to the cap they are, I guess.
Yeah, and again, so you can't say no, but I think it's negotiation by both teams through the media. Chelsea through the media on he wants 400, somebody's going to pay him 400K. And Rüdiger said, oh, no, we'll stay for 200. See, they're negotiating, but they're using the media to push their message across. We're willing to stay for less money because I'm a good guy and I love Chelsea and blah, blah, blah on Rüdiger's side. And Chelsea's side going, somebody's going to offer him 400K. We can't, we're out of the ball game. We're not going to offer him that much money. So I don't believe any of it. Now he could turn out to get 400K. Great. See ya. You're not worth 400K. He's very rash. That's his downfall as a center back. He likes to be aggressive, and that's fine when you have a Chilwell, a Kante, a Kovacic, Thiago Silva in the middle who can cover for you when that doesn't work out. When those players aren't there and you're doing the same thing and you get beat, it's going to end up in the back of our net. That's just simple ball. So 400K is a no for me. You're talking about Koundé coming in, who might sign a 5-year deal over a 3-year deal. And on a 5-year deal, you'll pay 200K out because you've got that player for 5 years at 200K, not 3 years at 200K. And so you're going to see 3-year deal be the thing now. Everybody wants 3-year deal. So in 3 years, when TV contracts come up, they can get a bigger deal, right? And their agents being limited on percentile as a fee, they want their players to get more contracts. So signing 3-year increments allows them to negotiate more contracts, which makes them more money. So that's kind of in a nutshell where I land on all of this.
Fair dues. I mean, I definitely do see what you're saying. Before I get to Charlie, we'll just quickly react to what Bry Guy said here. Reporters don't distinguish between an annual salary and the salary plus signing bonuses. Example, they lump in a sign bonus of X amount, which inflates the total salary number to Y amount. And then he continued that up by saying, but the contract is actually lower weekly wage. It's just the reporters don't break it down that way. It's more likely that is the case with Rüdiger, £200,000 a week, around 10 to 12 million plus signing bonus. While you're not wrong with that can happen, David Alaba is on 20 million euros a year plus the sign-on bonus that he got. So he actually is on 20 million a year, and then you divide that by 52 if you want to talk weekly wages. And plus that, he got a sign-on bonus. Now, what the report initially came on from very good sources, at least, was that the offers from the top clubs across Europe for Rüdiger are to triple his current wages at Chelsea, which is £100,000 a week, plus going up to £400,000, including bonuses. But those bonuses don't mean sign-on bonuses. Those bonuses are talking about success bonuses during seasons in terms of goals, potentially clean sheets, winning the league, winning the Champions League, doing this, maybe UEFA Team of the Year. Teams like Real Madrid do weird bonuses like that. So it's probably not quite like you said there in terms of that they're willing to pay him that it's just 200K a week, but 300K a week plus that could very well be the case. But I'll put it to you, Charlie. What was your reaction when you found out whether it's 300 plus bonuses or whether it's 400? Is that just like, why is he worth so much to others but not to us? Or
no, not necessarily. I just think, like, for these big European clubs who have got A lot of money, but also B, because there's no transfer fee involved, you can offer a much higher wage. So
but we don't have to buy Rüdiger either.
No, I know. But what I'm saying is, like, obviously, the wage structure at Chelsea is probably very different to these bigger clubs like your Real Madrid's. Like, for example, I couldn't ever envisage Chelsea having a 400, 500,000 pound a week player like
Especially
PSG do. Yeah, well, yeah, or anywhere on the pitch, like a PSG do, like a, like Real Madrid do, etc. Like, I just don't think that's not how the club works within its structure. But I wouldn't be. That doesn't surprise me if Rüdiger can go and earn £300,000 a week playing for Real Madrid or playing for another big team, Bayern Munich or whatever. Then at the end of the day, like, these guys, it's a short career. You've got to earn as much money as you can. And you know what? Go and take it. If someone offered me 3 times as much money to go and do my same job, I'll go and do it. Like, football seems to be the only job where you get criticised because you've gone somewhere to earn more money. So for me, like, if he wants to leave, then that's his choice. Obviously, we're disappointed, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good you are. You don't want someone at your club that doesn't want to be there. Plus, also with Chelsea, we know it's a revolving door. Tuchel, fantastic at the moment. We'd love him to be here for 3-4 years. Reality is, he might not be here next year or the year after. Now, what does that mean for Rüdiger? Could it be a different system, back four, etc.? Do we really want Rüdiger on, say, a 3 or 5 year contract, £200,000+ a week or whatever, and the system changes, and we know that he's not really been great in a back four? So what does that kind of say? Because Germany play a back three and Chelsea play a back three. If we end up with him big contract and we switch to a back four or a different manager comes in, then we might not see this Rüdiger.
I see what you're saying. I always struggle with this because how great was Rüdiger in a back three under Conte? He wasn't particularly great. Who made him great in a back three was Tuchel. So who's to say Tuchel can't also make him great in a back four? Do you know what I mean? Like, I see what you're saying. We haven't seen it, but at the same time, that's, to me at least, equally as likely as Koundé making a good switch from La Liga to Premier League and adapting perfectly well. Even Wesley Fofana coming back. We'll talk about him in just a second. Him coming, even if it's a Premier League move, coming from a Leicester side, especially Leicester this season struggling quite a lot, but he's not in the team, and maybe that's why they're struggling more. But still, I feel like there's less risk attached to putting our own player, who we know well, especially our manager knows well, putting him in a different system. I feel like it's less risky than signing a player from a different team and thinking, oh, he's going to be great in our back four now. Because I feel like you're more likely to know what your own player is going to do than what a player from a different club is going to do.
I mean, one thing I would be slightly annoyed about is that if, as it looks like Rudiger's going to go on a free, if we then, whoever comes in, whether that's Koundé, whoever it is, and we offer them the money that Rüdiger wanted, why? Like, I wouldn't understand that from a club perspective, from a business perspective. It wouldn't really make much sense if it is literally down to the fact that he wants 200k, but we're only offering 100. Like, what's the reason for that? Because for me, Rüdiger in the last, let's be honest, he's been here 4 or 5 years, signed from Conte. He's only really been good for just coming up to a year. Let's be honest, he's only really been top performing for a year or so. Now, the new contract comes up, he's banging form. He should be getting a pay rise. And no disrespect to the likes of, your Loftus-Cheek, your Callum Hudson-Odoi, etc. Rüdiger does a bigger job for this team than those guys do. Yet, why is he paid less money than them? And why can't the club, on a extended contract, when he's one of our best players, one of the best defenders in the world currently, why can we not offer him? We can't even offer him £200,000 a week, which in Chelsea's wage structure, it puts you probably middle of the range, maybe at the bottom of the top earners. It just doesn't make sense to me on that front.
No, I agree. And that's kind of half the problem. But not only that, in terms of who we sign, all the centre-backs we're linked with, unless I'm missing someone, are all young players. Whether it's Fofana, whether it's Koundé a bit older than Fofana, but still young players. But if we lose Rüdiger and we replace him with that, we lose an experienced player, a leader, and replace him with a young player. Like, if Christensen left, even though he's 25 now, and we replaced him with Fofana or Koundé, fair enough. But for me, if we want to actually consistently, and not just do it this season and then next season be awful again, like we unfortunately sometimes have this up and down yo-yo effect of one season to the other. If we want to stay there with City and Liverpool and challenge again next year, well, however this season ends up ending, we can't just replace one of our leaders with a 22-year-old or 20-year-old Fofana. Like, that's just not how it works, man. Especially when Thiago's getting older and older. And we'll probably, I mean, hey, to be fair, I said this before this season, and the guy seems to be playing more than anybody else without any problems. But at some point, I presume that has to slow down a little bit. Like, when he turns 38, surely he can't be playing just every week, every game for like a month straight at 38. Like, at some point that has to stop, right? So we need, and if Thiago's not on the bench, who's going to be the leader then? Because judging by the game against Zenit, I don't want Aspi as wing back or as right centre back anymore. Again, like we obviously just touched on, when we have so many other players missing, it makes even the more comfortable players and more established players struggle a bit more to show their real potential and their real performance, of course. But still, it's not good. It's not good. I do just quickly, before we get onto Fofana, because I want to hear your guys' opinion on him, quickly react a little bit to a lot of things I've seen on Twitter after the Zenit game, where people were like, oh, Christensen, if you don't want to stay, no, I don't want, I'm not sure if I don't want you to stay either. I'm like, yeah, he was bad. He was really bad. But you can't just like switch your opinion completely 180 degrees on the basis of one game. That's just silly. You have no idea. None of you, including me, have any idea whether this bad performance had anything to do with him not having signed a contract. Because, well, where's this assumption come from? Like, plenty of players have signed contracts and not signed contracts and played well and not played well. That just happens. Let's not turn our whole opinions and, affiliations and liking towards players on the basis of one performance, right? And again, if you want to be unhappy with Christensen not signing a contract, that's fair enough, but not on the basis of playing well badly in one game. That's, I think, very over the top for me. But anyway, let's get to Wesley Fofana. I'll stick with you, Charlie. Do you know much about him? Obviously, when we played them in the FA Cup final, when we played them in Frank Lampard's last Premier League game last season, I was like, this kid is good. Obviously, he picked up an ACL injury, as far as I'm aware, and he is still out. He should be returning towards the latter end of the season, so he should still get game time this season, which, if we were interested in him, would be good. At least we wouldn't sign him injured and us having to be the one to bring him back. But he just did his ACL in his 20. Is that really the player that we need, especially for the money that is reported to be asked by Leicester City? Of course, it was also reported that they wanted 80 million for Ben Chilwell, and we got him for 50. But still, it's going to be expensive. So I'm like, if we're going to use one of young centre-backs, like, we just brought Chalobah through. I don't know. I'm sure we'll find a way. Like, it's probably cheaper for us to get Tomori out of AC Milan than it is to get Fofana out of Leicester. Do I think Tomori is better than Fofana? Maybe not. But, do you know what I mean? Fofana is still 20. I'm not sure how much I want to sign a 20-year-old for that much money as a defender. Forwards, sure. We signed Pulisic, whole different ballgame. But for a defender, don't want to sign a 20-year-old for so much money that basically means he must play regularly. I'm not sure, even if I rate him a lot as a player. What do you think?
Oh, look, no, I'm a massive fan of him. I think he's class. Obviously, when he came from St Etienne, obviously Arsenal probably signed the wrong one. They went for Saliba. Leicester got Fofana. So I think they picked the right one there. To be fair to Leicester, their scouting department, their transfer business is second to none. It's outstanding. So obviously identified another great player there. Fantastic season. Obviously devastating for the lad to pick up the ACL. Now, you never know when you get an ACL injury, if you're going to come back the same player or not. I think at 20 years of age, it's probably going to be okay than if he was a bit older, but obviously you never know until you're back on the pitch. He's a sort of player that I'd love to see at Chelsea. I know we go on about experience, but experience doesn't necessarily mean age. It can be like, you've got players that are experienced that might be like 21 or 22. They've played hundreds of games. That's experience. The age is irrelevant to your experience levels because, as I said, you could have played absolutely hundreds of games and you could be 24, 25. So you don't necessarily have to be in your 30s to be counted as experienced. 20, yeah, look, the guy's got a lot to learn still probably, and his game will develop a lot. But I would love to see him, particularly, we've got the likes of Rüdiger, I think he's all but gone. Thiago Silva has probably got, one more season. I think we'll offer him a 1-year deal after the World Cup. I wouldn't be surprised if he retired. Aspi is going to leave pretty soon as well. He's winding down, not quite the player he was. We've got spaces to fill there. We need some players that are going to come in that are good to fill that defence. And there's not a great deal of really talented centre-backs around at a good age. You look at it and you think, right, we've got De Ligt, Koundé maybe in there, and then looking at Fofana. Pau Torres, I quite like him at Villarreal as well, a little bit older, but he's decent. There's not many about. So would I like to see Fofana play for Chelsea? Yes. Do I think it will happen? Probably not. Not this summer. Maybe the one after, once he's had a season to see how he is after the ACL. I think that's going to maybe put clubs off this summer. And then if he has a great season or shows that he can get back to that form, then yeah, we get him. Like, you can look at him in the following summer. But I think it's quite a big risk to take this coming summer, given the fact that he's not played any football, and ACL is one of those injuries that you don't really know how you're going to play afterwards.
No, exactly. I do agree. I wasn't sure actually which foot is Fofana's stronger foot. I thought maybe it's the left side, because when he played against us, he played their left defender, but he's right-footed. I just checked. So, which is my favorite thing about Pau Torres, because he's actually left-footed. Which is why, if we want to sign a left-sided centre-back to replace Rüdiger, if we're gonna sign someone, why not sign someone left-footed that finds that transition probably the most easy? But just I will go to you right now. Bry guy said here, Martin Skriniar could be a solid option that has about 18 months left on his deal. I'm not quite sure how old he is. He's certainly a good centre-back, but isn't he the central centre-back for Inter in their back three, which is not the position where we need someone in? Yeah, sure, you could say Chalobah could play left centre-back and Christensen could play left centre-back. But if we're going to sign someone, surely we should sign someone for the position where we need the most in. Because if we're going to sign, might as well go all out, basically. But Jester, what were you going to say?
Well, I think we're going to lose two center backs this summer. One in Rüdiger, the other in Sarr. I think his agent's looking for teams to move to. So for me, the two names you look at, one is Koundé, because he's got that it factor that his ceiling. He's got that very high ceiling that you're looking for in that position group that we don't have right now. The other name is Attila Zibalai or Zibalai.
Salah, you mean the Hungarian centre back?
The Hungarian, yeah. Well, I'm just going to call him Attila the Hun. Okay. I brought his name up just to say that, right? Attila the Hun. I don't know if that's ethnically correct, but we're going to say it anyway. But he's the player that with the left foot that they're talking about signing. Which, if you have Sarr go out, he's still 22, 23.
Sure whether we can take those reports that said we're going to sign him as, like, you know,
I'm just saying.
Again, I'm not saying Matt Law is perfect, but if Matt Law says he knows there's no interest in Attila Salai, and Turkish media says there is, I feel like I tend to believe Matt Law more than random Turkish outlets. Do you know what I mean?
Great, and that's fine. I'm just saying we're linked to him. And so you might see an A center back, a number one center back come in with a possibility of another a number two coming in as well. As in, you rate their skill as a one, as the top level center back. And really, we have only one top level center back on our team, and that's Thiago Silva.
Yeah.
None of those other players you would pick to lead a tandem, a partnership, at all.
Well, I'm not. Do you include Rüdiger now, or are you including Rüdiger?
No, I include Rüdiger. I would not want Rüdiger as my lead center back. He's too rash. You want somebody that's going to be calm, going to marshal the defense. For me, the good thing about him is he's rash, and sometimes he can pick the ball up off and lead to a turnover and a quick shot on goal. The bad thing is when he gets beat in those positions, it exposes your defense. And I've seen it. You've seen it with Germany as well. Sometimes he's a little bit too aggressive in places he shouldn't be, and he puts pressure on the defense. And when you don't have your first options, you're going to get just run. And that's what happened at Zenit. We had people that were out of position and exposed our defense.
It is true. It is true. I mean, I've read a little bit about Attila Szalai because there's not much I know about him. My initial reaction when we were first linked to him was, by the way, he's 23, he's from Hungary, and he plays for Fenerbahce. Now, if he was Turkish and played for Fenerbahce at 23, fair enough. But the guy is from a different country at 23. If he was that good, why is he still at Fenerbahce? And I know you can't make the argument, but look where Leicester found Kante from, and look where Leicester found Mahrez from, and look where we found Mendy from. Again, let's not compare France to Turkey, right? Besiktas played Champions League football and haven't won a game in 8 games in their league, right? So, just because they have a big name, Galatasaray, Fenerbahce, Besiktas, doesn't mean they're actually good, right? But what I did read on him is he is actually half decent. The only big problem is he gets beat too easily. Now, do I want a defender that gets beat too easily? No, absolutely not. I don't want him anywhere near my club, right? That's the last thing I want a defender to be. Easy to beat, especially as a wide centre-back. In the middle, one thing, but on the side, no. But I do completely agree with what Jester said there. I think Koundé, we're going to go for Koundé regardless of whether Rüdiger leaves or not. I think we're going to try to sign Koundé anyway. I think that was always the plan. I think we stick by that plan. Maybe things change, of course. But as of right now, I still think we're going to go for Koundé anyway. I think the question is just, do we go for someone else as well? Like Fofana, like somebody else? Who the hell knows? I don't know. But Clutch, is Fofana someone you'd at all be interested in? Or what's your opinion on him before we move on to talking in more detail about tomorrow's game?
I don't know. I mean, he's going to be coming back from an ACL injury. And that's, as a football player, that is one of the worst injuries to come back from. Because you never know who you're going to get afterwards. You have zero clue how that player is going to perform. And like you said, it's going to be, 2 months of him playing before we're going to be able to sign him. And at that point, you're not really going to know the kind of player you're going to get. So I think he's very risky in that regard. When I looked at the Attila guy, not even going to try to butcher his last name, it looks like he doesn't even start for his team most of the time, unless somebody's hurt.
Sorry?
I haven't seen him start. Whenever I see him,
that's where Fenerbahce fans have told us he's been their best player for the last 3 years.
I looked at the last 6 games or something on score sheet and on the ESPN whatnot to see and he never started. He always comes off the bench in the 70th minute. At least the last 6 games I've looked at. So
okay, well then I'm confused. But
so
anyway.
I don't know what people are talking about in that regard. He's had 1 game where they rated him 7, but I've never watched him, so I can't do the eye test on him. De Ligt or Koundé, either way, I don't really care. I think De Ligt is going to be hard because of the wages that he's going to want. And Koundé, I think they're asking. I just read yesterday they're asking for 80 million or something like that for him.
Who cares, man?
And I don't.
Of course, they're going to rinse us now that we bought the contract situations.
I know, and it's we have so many positions that we're going to need to bolster coming up, and I don't know how much money we have to spend. Do I prefer Koundé and De Ligt? Yes. If we can get them, go get them. But outside, at the same time, if we can, however you need to do to keep Rüdiger, just do it. That's all I want.
Fair enough. I mean, someone said ACL injuries are not as bad as they used to be. Not sure back what before means, how long ago we're talking. They can come back stronger, but they can also not. My reaction to De Ligt, by the way, is I love De Ligt, big fan of him, but it would annoy me so much if we got De Ligt in terms of wages and money that it costs that we didn't keep Rüdiger, that I don't want De Ligt just for that reason, even though it would be probably the best of the lot. That's why it would annoy me. I'm not sure, because seemingly a lot of people seem to disagree with you here, Clutch, in terms of that he hasn't played, so I'm not sure if either ESPN got it wrong or maybe you accidentally looked at the wrong name. I have no idea. What I do know, and I said this the other day already, Daily Knowledge said it here, we need to worry back. What I said after this any game is, I don't know if Tomori is better than whatever. What I don't like is that we sold him a week before we changed managers. That's the stupidest thing I've ever had in my life. Surely they had an inkling, we might sack Lampard here. Surely don't sell a player on the decision based on the said manager that you might sack a week later. That's the stupidest thing I've ever had. But let's move on to tomorrow's game. Let's move on to talking about the lineup. Before we do so, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe. On the road to 15,000 subscribers. We have nearly 200 people watching, which I massively appreciate. So hit that big red subscribe button down below. It's always, again, massively appreciated. I do love the word appreciate, don't I? But anyway, it would be massively appreciated if you could subscribe and smash the like button for me as well. It's just one click of a button, doesn't cost you any money, barely cost you any time. You can just hear us waffle anyway. And it really helps me out with the algorithm. If you don't know what that means, doesn't matter. Just take my word for it, click the like button. It's brilliant. But here we have the lineup up on screen. Now, a couple of things. We were, for once, actually told by Thomas Tuchel who's going to start in certain positions. With one example, let me just try and switch this around. That works. So we know that Mendy is going to start in goal unless, according to Tuchel, something crazy happens tonight in the hotel type thing. And we also know that Reece James is going to start right wing back, which actually was a little bit surprising to me because obviously I want him to start. Of course I do. But the fact that he missed the Watford game with a small injury, with a knock, whatever it was, comes back for the Leicester game, West Ham game, was not meant to play, as far as I'm aware, against Zenit, only came in because Ruben got injured in the warm-up and now starts again. I mean, if he can handle it, brilliant. But I'm teeny tiny bit surprised by it, but I'll take it. But hence why I have already put these two names down because we know who they're going to be. I'll go to you, Jester. What do you think the back three is going to be?
I think we have no choice but to play Rudiger, Silva, and AC. Aspie was way off the boil. I'm sorry. That's got to be the back three.
I completely agree. Like, as much as, it's fun to talk about these lineups and stuff, and that's why we do it in every preview, there's going to be a few positions today where there's not much to discuss because it's literally we just have this option. Charlie, I presume you're not going to throw Aspie in there, especially after the way Zenit went?
No, absolutely not. It's a no-brainer. I mean, there's certain parts of the lineup for Chelsea that are quite tough to pick. This is the easiest three positions to pick on the pitch at the moment. Those three guys are playing, simple as that.
Yeah, no, exactly. Although stats-wise, Christensen was the worst of the lot. Christensen was even worse than Aspie against Zenit. But, obviously we've at least seen Christensen do all right at right centre-back. And, that was Aspie's first game at right centre-back since the last time we played Zenit. Hasn't played there since and was really poor last time out. So I would feel more confident in playing Christensen there, if I'm being completely honest with you. Clutch, I presume you agree?
Yeah, Thiago Silva in the middle. He's going to be the guy, the most important guy there tomorrow because he's going to be the guy who's going to keep the calm, keep the, whatever I'm trying to say. He's going to be the guy to muster the back line. I'm all over the place right now.
All good. But left wing back, we have, what's the expression that they use in this scenario? We have to pick between bad or worse, essentially. I'll leave it to each and every one of you to decide who is bad and who is worse out of Alonso and Saul. But obviously, we saw Saul make his first start at left wing back for Chelsea. Didn't go particularly well. Kai said he was worse than Alonso. I'm not sure if he was worse than Alonso, but he definitely wasn't any better than Alonso either. So, Clutch, for you, Saul or Alonso?
If I were to be picking it, or if I were to guess what Tuchel's going to pick, it's probably going to be Alonso. But I would also want to try to give Saul another chance because, I know what Alonso is going to be capable of defensively, and that's a little bit more scary than I know what Saul is capable. Or I just seen Saul for a little bit. That's his first time playing there in how long? Give him another chance to see if he can get it right, but I think it'll probably end up being Alonso.
See, and I know this is the wrong attitude to have when we're in a position that we're in right now, but I pick Alonso. I'm not sure which one's better, which one's worse at the moment there. But what I am sure about is that Saul is not going to do well against Leeds. Like, that Leeds is probably the worst team for Saul to play against because what has he struggled with most so far? High intensity. And who's the most intense team other than maybe Man City and Liverpool you can play against? Bloody Leeds United. And that's who we're playing tomorrow. And if we want any hope in the guy ever figuring his career at Chelsea out, then playing him tomorrow and, in my opinion, getting absolutely annihilated is the last thing we need. Will him and Alonso get equally as annihilated? I fear yes. So I don't think it makes much of a difference in terms of how well or badly we play. They're both going to be bad against Leeds. But I feel like Alonso can probably handle a bad performance better than Saul can. So if I want to have at least a little bit of hope that Saul at some point figures it out, even though hope has diminished drastically after being again bad against Zenit, that's why I'm going to pick Alonso. Also because he's just a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more used to the position. But it's a tough one for me. Charlie, for you, is it quite clearly Alonso or does Saul have a shout for you?
No, for me, it's quite clear Alonso, and I think that kind of shows how terrible Saul is that Alonso is a clear pick ahead of him. Yeah, he's played there before. He knows the position. All right, yeah, his performances haven't been amazing, but he was decent at the start of the season. I think in a game that we need to win, we can't be experimenting with Sal Niguez at wing back in a must-win Premier League game for us. If we want to try it again, try it against Brentford in the Cup or whatever. But this is not the game for it. So yeah, Alonso for me.
Fair dues. And Jester, do you agree, or would you go with Saul?
Since I can't say the name of the left wing back we have there without engaging my gag reflex, I can't bring myself to say his name. I think that's correct, but I would rather start Aspie there and just have him hang back.
It's a shout.
I would rather that than play that dude.
If you're going to do that, you might as well go to a back four.
In general, I might see the logic, but when I know that who's going to play in the middle, Jorginho is not fully fit, and Ruben's not fully fit. If I play Aspie there, we have just no legs in midfield, no intensity in midfield. So, but I say
and
that
Alonso gives you that?
No. Exactly. No, it's true. It's true. Obviously, maybe you can make not a big case, but it's at least something to slightly discuss. Callum Hudson-Odoi has, of course, played at least a few minutes at left wing back. Again, I agree with Jess that it shouldn't be played there, especially against Leeds. If we say now played Newcastle tomorrow or played Burnley tomorrow, Callum Hudson-Odoi left wing back, yeah, maybe. Because they're just going to sit so deep, it might be okay. But Leeds, with how they press, I don't want that space quite as exploited. But if I'm being perfectly honest with you, Alonso might leave less space than Callum. But Callum is so much quicker at closing space that in the end it might be the same anyway. So, again,
I don't want to see Callum on the pitch, on the bench, anywhere else after that performance against Zenit.
I mean, I agree, but look at the last time Alonso played; it was no worse, or no better.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but when you obviously can't be bothered because you're not in the position you want to be in,
yeah, no,
and
I agree with that.
I don't care. It looked like he just couldn't be bothered to be back at wing back. And that's where he's going to get on the pitch right now. And numbers that I have bear that out. That's with everybody in that position group now fit. He's going to find it hard to get minutes up there.
Unfortunately for him, I agree. But let's move on to the central midfielders, who we kind of know who's going to be. Like Thomas Tuchel basically told us Jorginho is going to play and going to play through the pain. He didn't tell us that Loftus-Cheek is going to start, but the fact that he told us essentially he's not injured and clearly doesn't want to be playing Barkley there again. That confirmed that Reece James is not going to play there again because he told us he's going to start a right wing back. And the likelihood of Saul all of a sudden playing in midfield against Leeds, like that's the least likely thing I've ever had in my life. That's least likely than Sansa being real. Do you know what I mean? Sorry for any kids watching. But I think this is probably going to be maybe Clutch is going to make a shout for Mason Mount, which against Leeds might even work better than Ruben. I can't even lie to you. But judging from how Thomas Tuchel spoke in the press conference, I think it's going to be those two. Charlie, I'm not sure if you got round to watching the press conference just yet, but regardless of that, if they're both even somewhat fit, would you go with those two, or is Mount in midfield a consideration for you?
Possible consideration, but I thought Mount was poor against Zenit as well. Not saying that he couldn't play. Not saying he can't play in the pivot. He could, but for me, he'd be much better used further up the pitch. I think he's more effective there. I guess almost by default, these will be the two. I mean, Jorginho, he needs to play. I mean, the fact that he's kind of 60-70% fit or whatever he is, and he'd rather play him over a fully fit Saul is kind of where we're at the moment. So yeah, Jorginho for me, and I think Ruben another opportunity. And I think he did well against West Ham. I have to say, out of the 3 games he started, West Ham was his best one out of Watford and United as well. So I think this probably be a good game for Ruben. So I'd go with him as well. I can't see Saul playing. Can't see Barkley in there. We're not going to have Reece James in there, so there's not really any other options. So yeah, for me, that'd be the pivot. Is Jorginho and Ruben.
Fair. Like I said, I agree. I do agree. Jester, just send me whatever you want me to show on screen. Just send it to me on Twitter DM, and then I can just show it on screen. It's probably the easiest way to do it. But Clutch, let me stick with you, or let me go to you for midfield 2. Would you go with those two, or would you like to kind of go back to your shout that you already had pre-Zenit of you wanting to play Mount there?
I want to play Mount there. I want to see what we can get out of that. I mean, right now, Ruben, we don't know what he injured or how hard he got injured. We just know he's back. So I'm not really willing to go out there and try and risk that again, at least at the moment. Give him some time. I mean, you have a guy who is a midfielder. That is what he is. And I do disagree with Charlie on the point that he does his best work down the field. I think he does his best work from deeper coming down or pushing forward. I think he is one of the better passers. He's gonna have the legs to help Jorginho. He's gonna be one of the guys who actually can make the runs across the field. He can do the dirty work. Yes, his pressing is gonna be missed up front, but at the same time, are you really gonna play Mason Mount over Ziyech right now? I don't think so, and I think Ziyech is gonna be starting up top along with other players. I think it would be better for Mason Mount to be in the midfield and give it a try than to risk Ruben getting re-injured when we're only just going to have a couple of midfielders fit anyway. So I think it's time to expend somewhere we have extra players, which is in the attacking position. And Mason Mount can play in the midfield. It's not like he's never done it before. And even if you needed to, you can even switch it to a midfield 3 and have Mason and Ziyech and then have Jorginho just behind him if you really wanted to.
I would agree with you if Mason didn't play 90 minutes away at Zenit. Because I feel like Ruben, even with a small knock, not having played that game, is probably fitter and sharper and readier to play this than Mount after 90 against Zenit. Especially with, we used this example of us. Callum was so bad against Zenit and Saul was so bad against Zenit. Bro, Mason Mount was no better than these lot against Zenit. I can't even lie. Like, hey, people might disagree, but we gave Barkley a higher rating than Mason Mount in that player rating stream. Right, like Mason had a shocker. So, if we're going to go by that, sure, he's earned a certain amount of credit and stuff, especially with that goal against West Ham, assist against West Ham, goal against Watford, assist against Watford, or by being out for a little bit before that. But again, he wasn't great against any, but still played the whole 90 minutes. But I don't think you're far off with your idea there. Let me just quickly get to the super chat here by Redneck Blue saying, don't think J5 was injured. Tuchel prediction. Now, was he fully injured so that he definitely couldn't be involved? Maybe not. Is he playing through pain? 1,000,000%. I mean, why would Tuchel make that out? It'd be pointless. But to be fair, Tuchel never said that Jorginho is out. Well, no, he did say quite literally that. He never said that he's injured, but he never said. But he just said that he's out. So yeah, maybe he just didn't travel because we were like, okay, we're not going to play him anyway because we need to give him a bit of rest. So might as well just not take him and leave him at home. That might be true. That might be true. But I appreciate the donation, and also appreciate the donation a lot by Strip Bear. Big up yourself. I hope you're doing well. But Jester, I'm not sure if you're quite ready to send or say what you need to say, or it won't let me send an Excel file. I can share my screen if that works. I can't remember the last time I was a guest on a stream thing. So, do you have a share screen button yourself, Jester?
Yeah, I've already shared it. All you have to do is approve it. It should be down at the bottom of StreamYard.
There it is. I'll get rid of my screen in just half a second, and then we'll open your screen. And then that should be all good going. Before we get into those numbers for the front three, let me just quickly ask you, do you agree on this midfield too? Would you like to see Mason Mount play there again next to Jorginho for the legs against a team like Leeds, or is this what you'd pick?
Well, I think that's probably what he'll end up picking. But, if I'm looking at it, if I have two players that were out midweek week for, maybe a slight injury concern for one of them and pain for the other, tells me that they're not fit for 90. Both of them, they're not fit for 90. Do you play two players that are really not fit for 90 and could be a possible sub in the same grouping? Because that retards the way you can affect the game. Right? Because if you know you're going to have to sub those two players off, possibly, you only have one sub to change the game after that. So do we even have two players on the bench to sub two midfielders off? Well, you would have to slide James in there and bring Aspie on at wingback, or Callum or Pulisic. That's what you would have to do. So that's my only reservation is, do you take that gamble? Do you roll that dice? You know, and in the 35th minute, both of them are sitting on the ground on the pitch going, I need to be subbed off. And then there's 2 subs down and you can only affect the game once in an attacking sense.
I think you make a good point. Although I will say the likelihood of Jorginho having to be subbed off, I think is very slim, because I feel like the guy's just going to play through any pain that he has. And it's, judging from it, it's more like just overuse of his body rather than like impact problems. So I feel like he should probably be fine. But I see the logic. And would your other option, if not Ruben, because obviously Tuchel told us that Jorginho will start, would that then be Mount? I presume it's not going to be Barkley.
No, he would be the most equipped to play that role.
For sure. So let's show it up like that on screen, and let me share your screen thing. I do think I need to close mine for half a second before I can open yours. There you go. Let me show this. So what Jester's going to show us now. Oh, can you zoom in on it? Because otherwise it becomes here.
Give me 1 second.
If necessary, just Command plus should work. Or Control plus. There you go.
Does that work better?
Works a bit better. If everyone watching just full screens, I think you'll get the idea. Although a bit more of a zoom wouldn't be awful. But it works. It works.
I can try to go up a little bit further.
You can do Control scroll wheel up and it should go a little closer.
That better?
Well, yes. If we now see everything that you want us to see, then yes.
Well, it's pretty much, yeah. So all I did is I went through everybody's minutes, divided that by 90. So this is how many 90-minute or games, complete games they've actually played, as in 90-minute sessions. The goals and assists, and then their goals and assists per 90. And so you can see Mount is as 0.78. But this is the one I want to really bring up. Why would you need Callum on the pitch?
Well, I was just going to say one thing on that. Stats are all great in that, but what I will say in Callum's defence is that he's created multiple chances. If the finishing was better against Burnley, Callum's assists would be probably +2, +3. And that can be said across maybe 1 or 2 games. If people could finish, he'd have a few more assists. So I get like the stats is correct there, but it can also be slightly misleading because he would have a couple more assists or a couple more goal contributions if guys could actually put the ball in the net.
And if Werner could stay onside, he'd have so many more goals. That's ifs and buts. What I'm saying
but that's at least Werner's own fault.
Right.
Yeah, this is not Callum's fault though. Like Werner being offside is his problem. Like for me, your pass is only as good as the person finishing it. So like you can put loads of balls into the box, and if the guys are finish it in front of goal, then your goals and assists like numbers are not going to be good. But that's not your fault because the person that's on the end of them is not finishing them. But it goes in swings and roundabouts. But I just think sometimes stats can be a bit misleading.
And something else you see, I mean, look how close that Chilwell and Havertz are to that same number. And we talked about Chilwell having one of the best seasons, and he's not too far off of that number. So I can't really go off of that.
He's a midfielder.
My only problem with, that doesn't matter. That position is supposed to contribute too. That's why they go so much further forward. My problem with Cho has only ever been his finishing. That's all it's ever been.
Yes, but I put Chilwell on and James and Kovacic because they're midfielders in our 3-4-3. And when your midfielders have a better goal contribution than some of your attackers, you can see why we have issues in attack. And I keep hearing how amazing Callum has been on this run. He's played almost 1,200 minutes this year. He's got 4 goal contributions. And then those were against pretty much easy teams, except for the Juve goal. So don't tell me that he needs to be a shout or a starter on this team when he's a better assister than scorer, and you're playing him in a role that you want a shooter in, not an assister. An inverted wingback is meant to be a scorer, not somebody who assists. Because they chop in on their favorite foot and they can hit the goal. He doesn't.
Ideally, they'd be both. If we had any good wingers, we'd finally have someone that can actually do both. But we only have people that can do one, which is half of the problem. For me, I'm kind of that's why I love getting Jester on as well, because I know a lot of people disagree with his sometimes slander of Hudson-Odoi. But Jester, as much as you can call it slander, you can disagree with his stats, or you can think the stats aren't as important as he makes them, but you can't say the stats aren't there. So that's why I think it makes at least for an interesting discussion, which is why I sit somewhere between Jester and Charlie, because on the one hand, for sure, and Clutch to some extent as well, because for sure, Callum should be doing more than especially those numbers. But it's a little bit like, because Kai Havertz's numbers, if you go up, they aren't particularly brilliant either. But we see every time Kai Havertz is not on the pitch, we're not as good without Kai Havertz on the pitch. It's just fact. I'm not saying that very same goes for Callum Hudson-Odoi. And I know Timo had 2 goals and an assist the other game. But we're still better with Callum on the pitch than we are with Timo on the pitch. And I'm not that doesn't have anything to do with Pulisic now. But Pulisic, I've now come to the point where I'm like, Tuchel just wants to use him as a super sub. That's it. Tuchel just wants to use him as a super sub, and until Pulisic does something crazy in training or when he gets to start a game, and he rarely does, unfortunately, when he does start games, he's amazing when he comes off the bench. The amount of impact nearly every time he has when he comes on, it's kind of his own downfall because he's just too good at that. Like, even against Zenit, he wasn't amazing. Plays in a position where he's not meant to be particularly great at, and still does the best piece of individual play anybody's had all day. Aside from maybe Barkley's pass in the build-up to Lukaku's goal. But in terms of, that was more than one touch of the ball. He did the best thing any player has done on the pitch. But why would Pulisic not have started against it? There was no logic behind that after he didn't start West Ham. So my assumption now is Tuchel sees him as a super sub.
Right. And the point of this was not to bring up, start comparing players. But I've seen other streams where people are saying, well, you got to have Callum in the starting lineup. No, you don't. And if you're going to have him in the starting lineup, you play him on the right. Unfortunately, and what we saw that was good in the Zenit game, we're better with Lukaku playing off the right and having somebody opposite. You could put Havertz opposite. You can put Pulisic. You can put Werner. You can put Callum there. It's just not going to be as productive as him being on the right-hand side and being able to whip balls in. That's what he's best at right now. He doesn't have much of a left foot, and his shot has gone someplace.
It is true. It is true. Let's just, for a second, quickly focus on the goal contributions per 90 before we go to the other screen again to decide what front three we do want to focus on. So highest on that list is Timo Werner, of all people, with 0.84, or 0.85 if you want to round up to that number, which is pretty good, to be fair. As much as I just slandered him and say, we're better without him on the pitch. Goal contributions, you can't really complain much so far this season. There's nothing you can do about it. Stats are stats. But second is Mason Mount, to be fair to him. How do you feel about that, Jester, when you made those stats and you saw Mason was second? I'm joking.
He did have a hat trick. So that doesn't mean...
He did have a hat trick, but nobody else had a hat trick. Everybody else could have scored that hat trick against Norwich, but he was the only one.
No, fair enough. I'm saying I knew his goal contributions would be high. I thought his minutes would be higher. That's the one thing I thought that he would be leading in minutes on that list, and he's not.
Yeah. It's crazy that Cover, even though he's now been out for 6 weeks now, has just less minutes than Mason Mount. That's crazy to think. But after Mason Mount, it is Christian Pulisic. Again, my worry is that he is only seen and used as a super sub now. Reece James, of course, we know will start anyway. But in terms of front three, Lukaku and Havertz is the problem. So now let me switch the screen again. Obviously, just if you want to use the stats again, just tell me and I'll get that one up again.
No, you're good. I'm going to stop sharing it.
All good. I'm trying to minimize the screen here, but it's taken half a second. So give me a second. I don't know why minimizing the screen takes half an hour now, but sure. Add to screen. There we are. Back we are. So let me go to you, Charlie. Based on what Jester just showed us, plus obviously your opinion previously, who would be your front three? Because Timo is a tough one. You see it there by far, like 0.85 to 0.78 of Mason Mount. That is quite a big difference, actually. So, like, by that logic, does Timo have to start, especially on the basis of getting 2 goals and an assist the other day? I presume up front, we can have our opinions, but the fact that Lukaku played as much as he did, I very much doubt he starts tomorrow. That would be very surprising to me. So I presume it's going to be Kai. But who's going to be around?
Mate, for me, I think Werner has to play. Sorry, mate.
Let's presume, just for you, that it's Ruben in midfield, just in case if you would like Mason in the front three.
For me, I think Lukaku, obviously, he played 70 minutes. He looked knackered. I'm not sure if he's going to... I'd be perhaps surprised if he starts. I just maybe expect to see him on around the 60-minute mark. But yeah, for me, Timo Werner, I've criticised him a lot in his Chelsea career. I did see a stat the other day doing the rounds that no player scored more goals for Chelsea since Werner signed than himself. But I'm not sure if that's more a damning indictment of how poor we've been in front of goal rather than how good he's been. It's probably somewhere between the two. But credit where it's due, he's had one of his best games in a Chelsea shirt against Zenit. And I think with Werner, he's a confidence player. So for me, he would be starting because based on that last game, and I think if he found himself on the bench, I think he'd be a bit disheartened by it. So I'd probably put him there with Havertz. And then the other side's interesting because I thought Mount wasn't great against Zenit. 90 minutes in the tank. We've got other options there. And I think that at the moment, Pulisic, for me, when he started, hasn't been good enough. He's not shown anything that he kind of deserves to start. So on the other side, I love Callum, but I'll probably go with Hakim Ziyech on the other side. I'm not sure that Mason Mount will start. So that would be my front three for the game. I mean, to be honest, Tuchel could do something completely different, but I think there's a good chance that it could end up being that. And I think Ziyech probably deserves to start as well. I think he's been really good in recent weeks. He's been offering quite a lot. And I know when Mount doesn't play there, we kind of miss the press, but Ziyech is actually very good at pressing from the front himself as well. So
and so is Timo, to be fair.
Yeah, and Timo as well. And I think particularly against Leeds as well. Leeds just gung-ho. They just don't care. They'll just chuck loads of people. There'll be a lot of space in behind, which will probably help out Timo as well. So yeah, I think that's a good front three for the game.
Yeah, no, I agree. Whether it's then Mason in midfield or Ruben in midfield, I agree that it shouldn't be Mason in the front three regardless, in all honesty. Timo against Leeds will be interesting because on the one hand, like you said, them being as gung-ho as they are will give him space in behind, but it will also make his weakness, that is his first touch and his decision-making when he receives the ball, shine out even more, because if they're straight on him, he needs to release the ball quick and he needs to have a good touch. So it will be similar to the Zenit game, I fear. If he does start, he will look awful all game, but still have 2-3 very good moments that can help us score goals. That's what I expect from Timo Werner if he does start this game. But I completely agree on the front three. I completely do. In terms of going back to the stats, and not just stats, but also what Jester touched on in terms of Lukaku worked quite well off this half off right position, which obviously we don't have when we play a 2-1 rather than a 1-2 as much, because that's not quite Lukaku's role. But what we could eventually do, again, not tomorrow, because it'd be very surprising if Lukaku starts. But we could start Lukaku here, Kai here, and then let them switch, but give them the freedom to switch in-game freely. I think that could be good. The only problem with that is, and I think they still haven't played together since then. Maybe they've had when Lukaku come on, but essentially they haven't played together. Before Lukaku's injury, Kai Havertz hasn't completed a single pass to Romelu Lukaku. We were looking at those stats just after Lukaku got injured. So not sure if that whole switching idea between those two will work, because they seemingly have no chemistry whatsoever. But we'll finish off with you, Jester, after you obviously brought the stats already. So let me go to you, Clutch. Is that front three you get on board with, regardless of whether Mount starts in midfield?
Every time we get to this point and Timo has a good game or has a game where he contributes, I don't forget what he has done before. He works in some games and he just doesn't in most of the other ones. So, Andy just played 90. So are we really going to expect that same amount intensity from him in this game? Is he going to be able to run that much?
Oh, arguably more. He's German.
I mean, I agree with Kai and Ziyech. I would like Pulisic there, but I think you're probably spot on with he's probably seen more of as a super sub. So if I were to say what I think Tuchel's going to do, it's probably going to be this. What I would do is I would switch Werner and Pulisic and then get down to the basics instead of just having Timo, who may or may not end up having one of his classic games where he gets all these chances, doesn't finish it, and then we're here tomorrow giving him a 0 because he did all the dirty work, but nothing came of it.
Yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. See, I go to Jester now because I do see what you're saying. I just fear Leeds is not fear, but I think Leeds alongside Liverpool is one of those games where Werner actually does make at least a little bit of sense. While if we were, again, going back to that example, say Newcastle, Burnley, whatever, if we were playing those, I'd 100% back Pulisic over Timo. But I think the logic that Charlie used, that was a confidence player in terms of the fact that I just don't think Tuchel wants to start Pulisic these days just because he thinks he's the only guy that can actually change things from the bench, which is an important attribute of a player to have as well, I suppose, even if the player doesn't like it. I would probably lean more towards Werner, but Jester, obviously you're a big fan of Pulisic. So what is your, obviously react to the whole front three, whether you'd agree with them, but in particular, obviously this left side.
Yeah, if I was going to start Pulisic, I would put Werner, Havertz, and Pulisic out there.
Okay.
But
would you then put Timo on the right, I presume?
No, on the left.
And Pulisic on the right?
Yeah, and that would justify Mount being in the middle to play through balls to Pulisic and Werner, who could get behind, and Havertz could drop a little bit. Okay. I think Havertz and Werner link up very well, and I think Havertz and Pulisic link up very well, as in you can look back at the goal at Zenit. But I don't think that Pulisic is going to start.
No, neither do I.
I was just trying that. I think that if you do this, I would almost put Jorginho at a 6 and play Mount and Ziyech at 8s and put 2 up front and Havertz and Werner.
Like that.
Yeah. Although Ziyech might be.
I agree. I would like that. Even whether it's Ruben or Mount, I would like that regardless, to be completely honest with you. But considering Tuchel didn't even do that against Zenit, I don't think he's going to do it tomorrow.
Right. Well, it's a possibility. I thought he did kind of do that toward the end.
Toward the end for sure, but he didn't start with it.
No, he didn't start with it. But that puts Havertz and Werner closer to goal together. And Havertz is one person who can get the best out of Werner, I think, on our team. Because he plays with him more. He knows what kind of runs he'll make, how to get him the ball. So I'm fine with that. Or you can always just drop Ziyech in as a 10 and invert Havertz and Werner as strikers together. That's the only way you can do it.
Fair enough. Sorry, I'm just replying to, I guess, now that I'm talking about it already. I can reply to Strip ads comment here. Pulisic made Chelsea $40 million, presumably dollars, just on shirt sales. Slight correction, he made Nike $40 million a year just on shirt sales. Chelsea only get a small, teeny tiny percentage of said shirt sales, which is why Nike pay us $60 million a year to be our shirt sponsor. Why would they pay us $60 million a year if we then also get all the sale revenue? That wouldn't make any sense to Nike at all. Do you know what I mean? Like, that would be pointless. But fair enough. But yeah, I mean, I definitely see the logic. I wouldn't be opposed to it whatsoever. The suggestion that the Jester just had, and if you want to make it a seamless switch that we can even do just at times in the game, not even just for the whole game, just put Jorginho to the right, which you can do with, especially if it's Mason on the left, probably finds that a bit easier than Ruben, just because, Ruben's always kind of playing the right so far, while Mason obviously plays that position quite a lot, so would probably be more comfortable off the left anyway. Plus Mason's legs to help Alonso out a little bit, and then you could just very easily switch that and let Ziyech drop a little bit and Havertz move over a little bit and Timo fill that a little bit. Then it would be a completely seamless transition between both formations and setups without actually having to change any personnel, which is, I guess we can line it up like this because then we find a lovely mix between what Jester said and what as others have suggested so far.
That's what's going to happen anyway, because Ziyech always drops into the midfield when he plays. So he's going to drop and play as either a roving number 10 or a roving number 8. He'll drop into the midfield. So you'll have James higher up on that right-hand side.
He does, but usually Jorginho's off the left. And if
Right.
you want Jorginho acting as the 6, if Ziyech drops in from the right, that would kind of make Ruben or Mount act as the 6, which is not really what we want. So if we were to switch it would make that easier, even though you're right, of course. That Ziyech
Well, no, I'm just
anyway.
saying
Although
you're
it
gonna
drops
see
more to a 10 rather than an 8. Just
Yeah,
for
but
now.
he gets pretty deep.
Yeah.
I'm saying you're going to see that anyway. If Ziyech plays, you will see what you just showed, regardless of who's in the midfield, because he will. That's what I'm trying to get to. He will drop.
Yeah, no, I agree. I completely agree. Charlie, anything you would like to add on the lineup we have so far or what we've discussed so far? Or shall we move on to score predictions and round it out?
No, I think that's pretty much it, really. I don't see an awful lot different there, to be honest. Maybe 1 or 2 in the front 3, possibly, but yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward tomorrow for me.
Fair dues. Clutch, do you agree as well?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think this is what we're going to do because, Tuchel was talking about we need to go back to basics. So this is one of the ways we just go back to basics. This is how we're going to do it.
Fair dues. As I am with you already, Clutch, I'll ask you first. Score prediction. You think we're going to bounce back and end our run of slightly poor form? But not only do I want a score prediction, if we get whatever score prediction you are going to say now, is it going to come with a good performance or is it going to be a Watford game and somehow we grind out?
I think we're going to grind this one out. I think we're going to be going back to learning what we were doing. This is going to be that game where we're going to get a win. I think it's going to be 2-1. I think they're going to hit us on a counter or something. Is it Rafinha who's out or is it
Oh, yeah, by the way,
Rodrigo?
Good shout. Rodrigo is out, Bamford is out, Phillips is out, and Cooper is out. Cooper, the captain, even though I don't know if he's any good, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. But Phillips, obviously a big player for them. Bamford, a big player for them. And Rodrigo, well, when they signed him, you would have thought he would be a big player for them, but hasn't really turned out that way. So, yeah, exactly that. But Rafinha, as far as I'm aware, is actually available. But still, they're missing Bamford. And as far as I'm aware, it's expected that Rafinha actually will start up top, which no problem, then Thiago will deal with him.
Fair.
I'd rather Rafinha up top than play against Alonso. So,
yeah, Bo's probably going to end up dropping over there to exploit that, but who knows? I'd probably go for a 2-1. I think we're going to grind out this win, but I think it's going to be coming in late in the second half.
Fair dues. Fair dues. Let me go to you, Jester. What do you reckon? Score prediction. We're going to bounce back?
It's bounce back time. We're coming back with the 3s, 3-0. I think
love that.
With Calvin Phillips out, I think we'll own the midfield. And I think Timo will feast in behind. And Thiago Silva will show once again in mustering the defense to get the clean sheet why he should have the armband, not Aspie, not Jorginho. The guy who actually leads on the pitch, Thiago Silva, is going to be man of the match.
Fair. Charlie, what do you reckon? Score prediction.
Yeah, I think we'll bounce back. We have to. We don't really have a choice at the moment. We're going to keep the pace with City and Liverpool, who have got winnable games this weekend. We simply have to put this kind of blip of form behind us. And I don't care if it's 1-0, it's an own goal or whatever it is. We just have to win. Having said that, I think this should be a game that would suit us. Leeds aren't great, let's be honest. They'll leave us a lot of space. We'll get a lot of opportunities. I'm gonna go for a 2-0.
Fair. And for me, the big thing, obviously, we discussed it earlier in the stream when we were like, against Burnley, we missed chances, and against United, we missed chances. And even against West Ham, we could have scored 1 or 2 more. But for me, we've scored 2 against Watford. We scored 2 against West Ham. We scored 3 against Zenit. They're not scoring enough. Against Watford, 1 anyway. But against West Ham and against Zenit, they're not scoring enough wasn't the reason why we didn't get points. I want us to make sure we get a clean sheet tomorrow. And if we're not as extremely on the front foot as we have maybe been in some games recently, I don't care. I think it's very, very important for the confidence in the squad, the confidence of the fans, and how Tuchel likes to work for us to get back to actually being solid in defense. And yeah, it's easy to say, yeah, but we'll have the best players back. We had those against West Ham and we conceded 3, right? Sure, one was the back pass from Jorginho to Mendy wasn't ideal. Mendy messed it up then. Mendy also messed up for the second goal. And I'm sure Mendy won't have a game like that again for probably another year, if that, right? I'm hoping, fingers crossed, touch wood. But we need to make, sure, if we win 3-1, absolutely fine. I completely agree with Charlie. Just get the win. But I think if in an ideal world, I think we add a clean sheet to the win and a 2-goal cushion. So I would love to see a 2-0, a 3-0. That would be perfect. But I think that nil, keeping that clean sheet tomorrow, would be very important for, in every sense of the word, for confidence, for everything. We really need to go back to being solid defensively, because our forwards are not good enough, unfortunately, at least currently, that we're going to outscore everybody. So we need to go back to where we're so good defensively that 1 or 2 is always going to be enough to win the game. Enough 3 goals conceded. Like that's what was that as a joke. That's ridiculous. Like even under Lampard, we didn't do that often. So let's go back to not conceding goals, please, because can't be handling that. But I think, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to round it out here. I appreciate all my 3 guests very much for coming on today. Charlie, of course, check out his YouTube channel. Have you hit the 200 yet, or not quite?
No, mate, not quite. 5 short. So yeah,
Exactly.
if anyone can help out in the chat, that would be greatly appreciated.
Exactly. Tell the people the name of the channel. Obviously, the link is down below, but if people would just want to type it in.
I literally just search the Blues Brothers. So I'll do it with my mate George. It's not the music one on the Everton channel. It's the other one. It's obvious. It's like a picture in a yellow circle. So yeah, if you just click on that, click the subscribe button, that would massively help me out.
Exactly. Help Charlie out there. Subscribe to him. The link is also down in the description. But if you want to just type it in the search bar, of course, you can do that as well. Check out Chester on Twitter and check out Clutch on Twitter. Appreciate you both for coming on. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're still here, appreciate you a lot. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like I said earlier already, we're on the road to 15,000 subscribers. And every new subscriber counts. So get subscribed, hit that big red subscribe button, do me a favor. And also smash the like button for me. One click of a button doesn't cost you any money, barely cost you any time. And it really helps me out with the algorithm. Again, just take my word for it. You don't need to know what that means. Just do it. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Up to Chelsea, upwards and onwards. And I'll see you next time.